Hi, I'm Joe Harroz, President of the University of Oklahoma. I want to welcome you to our Conversations with the President. This platform gives me the chance to talk to some of the great people who make OU so special. Make sure you're subscribed to Conversations with the President, and you'll be the first to know when new episodes are released. Let's get started. First things first, welcome back to the show. So glad that you've joined us. We are almost a month into the spring semester. Just driving over here, it was great to see Adams Hall is down. There is a new dorm rising out of the space. There is a lot going on here at the University of Oklahoma. After a monster record class last year, applications, here's a quick sneak preview, are up double digits again over last year. So things are great right here. Record research is taking place, driving the economy. So much excitement. We are almost ready to announce $1 billion on the march to the $2 billion campaign. And we are edging our way closer to the SEC. So a great time here at the University of Oklahoma. The one thing that is our North Star is that we will always be a place of opportunity and excellence. And that brings us to our topic today, which is exciting. This is Black History Month. It's a time for us to think about our past and the future and where we're going and what lessons we can learn from our past. To learn about Black identity and representation, we have two remarkable guests that are here with us today. One I've known for a good while and one I felt like I've known for a very long time and have heard about since I was very young. So Dr. Karlos Hill and Marilyn Luper Hildreth are here today. Let me do just a couple of quick introductions of each of you, talk a little bit about the guest who we are going to talk, who is not here physically, but is here in spirit and in so many other ways, which is Clara Luper. But first, let's talk about the two of you and what you bring to this table. The first is Dr. Karlos Hill. Dr. Karlos Hill, if you know anything about the University of Oklahoma, you know who he is. He is an author that has published a lot of great works. He is Regents Professor of the Clara Luper Department of African and African American Studies here at the University of Oklahoma. It was named that in 2018, and I was honored and privileged to be there during that naming. Author and community engaged scholar who brings a historical perspective to difficult racial events with which we must understand and reckon and learn from. He is author of 3 books, most recently the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre, Photographic History, which is on my table in my office since you hand-delivered it to me right after it was published. And last year you published a new edition of Clara Luper's memoir, Behold the Walls, that chronicles the Oklahoma City sit-in movement that we're going to be talking about. Also the founder of the Tulsa Race Massacre, Oklahoma Teachers Institute, which supports the teaching of the history of the race massacre to thousands of middle schoolers and high schoolers. And then Marilyn Luper Hildreth, who I just learned an important fact about that I'm not going to spoil. It's not in these cards about you, but we'll talk about it. Marilyn is the oldest of the latest Clara Luper's 3 children.
No.
How many?
I am the middle child.
The middle child.
My brother is the oldest.
Well, why would I get that wrong?
I don't know, but I thought I would help you
That's
out
why, if
with
I'll
that.
stop talking and start listening, we're actually going to learn something about it. So let me finish this, and then we'll get to the real facts as we know them. That's on me. When you were 7 years old, you were one of 13 children who participated in the historic Katz Drug Store sit-ins. We're going to talk about that more in depth. You currently serve on the committees for the Clara Luper Sit-In Plaza, Clara Luper Legacy, and the Oklahoma Clara Luper Civil Rights Center, and spend your time giving motivational speeches that continue your mother's important legacy. And your mother, here's just a quick, this would be the Wikipedia overview, and then we'll get to the actual details. But for our listeners, when you, if you don't know about Clara Luper, you're in for an absolutely important story and lesson. Clara Shepard Luper attended the University of Oklahoma, but first went to Langston to receive her first degree, and then was, as I understand it, the first African American, the first black student in the history education department, and graduated with her master's in 1951. And after graduation, and she was a history high school teacher, mentor to the NAACP Youth Council. We'll talk about the Katz Drug Store sit-in, but she is a remarkable individual, passed away in 2011. And while she passed at the age of 88, her memory lives in so many ways, and her lessons live in so many ways. So, Marilyn, let's turn to you and get to the non-Wikipedia version of your mother. Tell us about her and about what she means to you.
My mother was born in Hoffman, Oklahoma, in Offusky County. She was at the top of her class, but it was only 6 people in her class. She would fondly tell us all the time that in Hoffman, when they received the textbooks, because of the fact that it was segregated, they had textbooks with only half of the pages on it. And I think that's where she developed the ability to end the story, a continuous story, because they had to make up the ends to the chapters because there was no pages. And she said you can always achieve something if you can just think it out for a minute. And that's the way she was. My mother was a unique individual. She loved education, she loved children, and she looked at them as if they were pure diamonds. She could look at a child and said, children can learn. The only thing we need to do is to teach them. She wrote a play entitled Brother President when she was teaching at Dungy High School in Spencer, Oklahoma. And in this play, it was about the Montgomery boycott and Martin Luther King Jr. In the audience that night, Herb Wright, who was the executive youth director of the NAACP, was in the audience. He was so impressed with the play that he invited her to bring the one student to New York City. And she said no. She would not take one student unless she could take all of her diamonds. He said, Clara Luper, you know we don't have no money to take those students to New York City. The people in Spencer, Oklahoma saw the opportunity, and they raised money selling pickles and chicken dinners and catfish dinners to get us to New York City. And I want to tell you that I think that was a changing point of my life, because most of us had never had the opportunity to leave Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. And most of the kids, some of them hadn't even been to Oklahoma City. When she planned the schedule, she planned for us to go the northern route. Mm-hmm. That's interesting, because we never had the opportunity to go into a restaurant and sit down and eat a hamburger or even drink a Coke here in Oklahoma. We could not even live across 7th Street in Oklahoma City. We could not even, when we go downtown to shop, we couldn't even try on clothes and a hat or nothing. So when we got to New York City, Harry Tubman once said a little bit of freedom is a dangerous thing. And we felt so good because we had the opportunity to walk into a restaurant and sit down and drink a Coke just like anybody. But we had to come back to Oklahoma. And we had to come back through the South, where it was either color this, white this, sit in the back, do this. You can't eat here. And by the time we got back to Oklahoma City, we said, no, we can't live in a city that's still doing that. Why don't we try to make Oklahoma City like some of the places in the north where people can be free to go in and drink a Coke? I know it doesn't sound like much to you, but to young people that had never had this opportunity, it was a joy that I cannot express.
How old were you at this time?
Oh, let's see. About 8 1/4. But it gave us a different outlook on life, that what could be done. And thus, we started meeting with the NACP. We had an NACP Youth Council, and we met out in our front yard. Our house didn't have air conditioning, shotgun house, but kids loved to come over to our house. And we negotiated with the Restaurant Association here in Oklahoma City for over 2 years. After negotiating with them, they came back and said, no, we will never serve you because our white patrons don't want to sit next to you in the restaurant.
So the idea was it wasn't them that were being racist. It was their clientele that were being racist.
So that was okay with us. But I suggested, if they don't want to sit next to us, why don't we just go to Katz Drug Store and sit next to them and stay there until they served us.
Tell us where Katz Drug Store was.
On Main in Oklahoma City, on Main and Robinson.
So who came up with this idea?
I did.
Now, this is what I was going to tell you at the beginning of the show. Dr. Hill, I call him Karlos. He has all these fancy professor titles. But I didn't know this until I came in. And Karlos, she's being modest. Do you want to backstop this story and give us a little the history of how the famous, and tell us about the Katz Drug Store?
No, Katz Drug Store, in short, launched the modern civil rights movement in terms of its sit-in phase. Marilyn Luper initiated that by her suggestion on the evening of August 19, 1958, to her mother and her brother Calvin Luper, but as well the NAACP Youth Council. In that evening, she challenged them even to go down to Katz Drug Store because her older brother, Calvin, didn't think it was a good idea. And so what kind of began as a jest became a real plan that Mother Luper, Clara Luper, supported. And so 13 of them went down to Katz Drug Store, single file line inside, and quietly sat down. And that started a revolution that continued for another 6 years until every significant business in downtown Oklahoma City was desegregated. And that was started by her suggestion at 9 years old to go to Katz Drug Store.
Marilyn, that's incredible. Do you recall being there?
Oh, yes.
Tell me what you remember.
I remember I could not understand how adults could be so mean to young people because they would throw coffee on us, walk by and kick us, talk about our national heritage, and they didn't even know my name, but they talked about us and just really mean to us. But let me tell you something. They trained us in the passive, nonviolent resistance.
Who trained you?
Mom. She took her philosophy from Gandhi and Martin Luther King, and the young people had to be prepared mentally to go down and face intimidation from people, mean people.
It's really stunning. I mean, it's your idea at 9 years old. Your brother takes the opposite side of it, your older brother, Calvin. Mm-hmm. And did Calvin go with you?
Yes, he thought I was crazy.
But he went with you anyway?
Yes.
And your mom referred to her students and her kids as her diamonds.
That's right.
And as I understand it, one of those 13 was also Dean Stan Evans from the College of Law, who I had the honor to work with and is one of my dearest friends.
Well, Stan was not one of the original sit-ins. He was there the next day.
Gotcha. And
in Oklahoma City, we're building a sit-in plaza where you see the 13 original sit-inners. But all the sit-inners, whether it was the second day, third day, or fourth day, have a bond that's so tight it's scary. Because we knew that we had to stick together. And one example was I was in front of, I'm trying to think of what location that was, Animal's cafeteria, and I saw a man walking down the street, and this man had in his hand a rope, and on the end of the rope was a chimpanzee. And I was saying to myself, oh, Marilyn, what is that man doing in Oklahoma City with a chimpanzee? Well, the closer he got to me, I realized the man was coming directly at me, and he threw the chimpanzee on me. And my mother told me this. She said, after it was all said and done, I'm so glad that he chose you to throw the chimpanzee on instead of one of the other kids. Because I understand, and God was going to take care of you.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if I could have explained that to another parent.
No, isn't that amazing how people can be so dehumanizing as to do that, and to do that to a child. I mean, you were a kid, and someone was that callous and cold and dehumanizing and looked at someone because of the color of their skin so fundamentally different. Karlos, as you look at this historically, you've already said it was a seminal event, the Katz Drug Store. What did that precipitate historically in Oklahoma City and in Oklahoma?
The civil rights movement in Oklahoma. That's what the actions of Clara Luper precipitated. It was a watershed movement in the sense that it precipitated other student-led sit-in movements later. The famous 1960 Greensboro sit-in is precipitated by the 1958 sit-ins in Oklahoma City. So there were reverberations from it. But what I really want to seize upon from what Marilyn said is it's not only that Mother Luper taught them nonviolent civil disobedience, she really taught them radical love. She taught them to love people who despised them, who spit on them, who kicked them, as she described. That was her main lesson to her students, to love people who didn't love you. And in loving them, right, and her message to them is, we're not trying to change laws, we're trying to change and transform people. And so you have to love those people then, not just try to change policies. And so radical love was really the main legacy of Clara Luper, not nonviolent civil disobedience.
That's a fascinating take. I mean, you look at every day, right? Every generation, in every circumstance, just the idea of loving your neighbor as yourself, which all of the major religions have some version of that as a fundamental principle. But to love someone, right? The radical kind of love where you love someone who doesn't know you but hates you without knowing you. I mean, that's a fundamentally different kind of love. It's not convenient, it's not easy, and it's counter to human our base human nature. And I think it's a great lesson right now. I mean, we'll get into the lessons of Clara Luper, but that idea of radical love is one that has resonance that certainly transcends even the dehumanizing elements of racism, right? Into every human interaction where somebody finds someone else to be less than human, less than themselves.
Absolutely.
Loving your brother and sister is easy when they love you back.
You're right, but it's hard to love someone when they don't love you and detest you.
And in fact, the reaction is the exact opposite, to want to come after them, to want to hit them back twice as hard as they hit you, right? I mean, that's a very sort of tribal instinct to want to go after someone that comes after you.
As a child, I could never understand how you could hate me and not know me just because of the color of my skin.
Yeah.
I couldn't understand that.
You know, in some ways, though, it's almost easier as you get older to understand our worst instincts than to actually engage in the most evolved instinct, this idea of radical love. Yes. I mean, that is a beautiful thing, right?
Yes.
That is a beautiful thing that takes work, that makes you check those things that are easy and do those things that are hard. There's a beauty of that certainly is critical for us to live together in society in a constructive way, and not just want to eliminate each other.
And President, one of the things that I've tried to do is figure out how to operationalize the teachings of Clara Luper. What does it mean to engage with radical love today? How would Clara Luper engage in radical love today with students? And I think just having been able to sit with Marilyn as much as I have, I know that she just, what was different about Clara Luper is the degree to which she cared about her students, and she would work with her students. She truly believed, when she called her students her diamonds, she truly believed that within them, all of them had greatness. And it was up to mentors such as her to just rub that surface until the diamond showed, to the glare of the diamond showed. And so she was all about spending the time with the students, and the time was the love, right? To find that gem inside of them. And so I think right now that's how I try to just trying to show as much love to students as I can, because I know that's the love that transformed Marilyn, transformed Stan Evans, and today they're still activated by Mother Luper's radical love. So I think that's, for me, why I've been so adamant about telling her story.
Yeah, it's a critical story. I mean, before this show started, I was talking about Stan Evans, who, by the way, wasn't one of the original 13. He came later.
Yes.
See, I've learned that now. But you know, he's someone in my life that when I worked with him and watching him work with his diamonds, his students, and I'm his colleague. Heck, I was his boss on paper as the dean of the law school, and he was the associate dean for students. He taught me, he embraced me, and he always expresses love in a way that makes you sort of shine. To your to your point, in my office, I've got a picture of Stan, and it's just me hugging Stan, and it does every day make me realize that. And I didn't realize it was derivative of Clara Luper's teaching this radical love, and how to take, all of us that are, poorly minted, and to actually uncover the diamond and to make it shine. That's I'm a direct beneficiary of those lessons.
And a student of Clara Luper, too.
That's right. Right. That's it. I mean, isn't it wild how it's connected?
Yes, absolutely.
In a very direct way. What is the part of your mom's legacy that most folks don't know about, but about which you're really proud? We've talked about the central message. Tell us something about your mom that doesn't often come up, but that you're really proud of.
I tell you one thing that I am truly proud of. It was very difficult for me to understand how somebody could be cruel to my mother. My mother went to jail 26 times. And I would see people in the area, in the community, stab her in the back, talk about her, and just cruelty. But she said, that's okay. That's okay. I don't worry about that. You need some tough skin. If you don't have some, go down to the hardware store, because you're going to need it. In this life, you're going to need some stuff. Go buy some.
You're going to need it.
And no matter what happened to her, she would always come back stronger and fight. She's feisty.
Isn't that amazing?
It is.
It's so easy to take the worst out of situations, or even the obvious out of situations. When somebody hates you and doesn't know you and does it for dehumanizing ways, and then to still love them and say, that's just part of it. Go pick up your skin, some tough skin over at the hardware store.
Go to the hardware store.
It's it's interesting. I'm sitting here, and I was struck when you sat down, not just at the glow that you have about you, but you've got a very cool, very trendy Oklahoma City hat on. And when you think about what you started when you were a young girl, and what you had to go through, you clearly love this state in a way that shows sort of a radical love. What do you see as the growth that you've seen and the growth that we need to have as a state?
I'm so glad you asked me that, because I've seen a lot of progress over the years. I've seen black history be included in the school system, but now I see it being taken out of the school system. I've seen the history of my people put in books, and now I'm seeing these books taken out of the classrooms and out of the libraries. We've come a long ways, but we have a long ways to go. And until the good people in America decide to stand up and speak out, we're in trouble. Because we're not going back. And I tell them all the time, I'm not going back to a segregated society. I'm just as important as the next person.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, and Professor, one of the ways you and I have gotten to know each other better was around the Tulsa Race Massacre 100-year anniversary and the work that you did around this. And it's fascinating because I grew up in Oklahoma City. I went to public school in Oklahoma City. I did not learn about the Tulsa Race Massacre. Now, with the memorial and all the work that you've done, it's in our school books, but there are materials being removed. You have a unique perspective. You study this, and certainly here during Black History Month, it's a time to reflect. Same question to you that I asked Marilyn.
Well, for thinking about Mother Luper, I would just say what I am most amazed by to this day, and we were talking about this earlier, is for 50 years, Clara Luper took students, NAACP Youth Council students, but then I just think just students, to the NAACP main meeting, annual meeting, every year for 50 years. She found a way to raise money, as she did to take them initially in 1950, 58, 59. She did that for years on end into her death. And so what I know about Mother Luper is that her commitment to people, right? She deeply loved people, invested in people. And that's the spirit that, I try to bring to studying her, is the love that she had for people and the ways in which, to this day, you can, I sit around the table with the Clara Luper Legacy Committee, and it's nothing but radical love around the table, inspired by her mother. And so I've been a beneficiary of just being able to learn the history, the felt history of the movement from Marilyn, who is, I would say, and I've become definitely a student of Mother Luper, because Marilyn is my mentor. And so in learning this history, and certainly in teaching this history, she's taught me how to do that. So I'm just so grateful. But what she said is what I would say. I'm deeply concerned in terms of the rollback. And the one thing that I've learned from Marilyn is our responsibility to make sure that it doesn't continue, right? It's activism, deep activism, organizing that will return that tide. So Clara Luper left the playbook for what we need to do.
Yeah, and I think it's fascinating. I didn't expect to have that jewel of wisdom, but this idea that it's not just nonviolent protest, it's radical love. And I love the perspective that that it isn't changing the law that comes first, but changing the people, because that's who makes the law. And the only way to get there is through our humanity. I also think it's fascinating, and I'm sure that we have the subject matter expert here, Professor, but I think it's, I don't know the origin of celebrating Black History Month, but I think it's fascinating and important that it's not just a heritage, right, but it speaks directly to the history, because it's a history that you have to understand to be able to honestly reflect on where we are, what the trajectory is, and how setbacks can occur. I think all the time about the Civil Rights Act of 1866, right? I mean, comes right after the Civil War, and right after the 13th Amendment, and it's to grant all citizens the same rights as white at that time males, and then they passed the 14th Amendment, right, a year and a half later. So we're at 1867, and yet, right, in the 1950s, right, a child has to tell her mother, let's go sit in, because we should have the right to sit and eat with white people. You have to know the history, right? Right? You can't just drop in and say it should all be the same, right? I mean, this is why I think this is why I when it was suggested to me the topic of Clara Luper to be our show for this month and to celebrate during Black History Month, it meant so much, because to know our local history, the history of this state, and what Clara Luper has done, and Marilyn, what you've done, and your absolutely critical role in that. You have to know it and feel it to understand where you are and where you have to go. And the lessons of radical love, it's just a beautiful thing, right? Like right now, and you can take race off and put in something else right now. The only real anecdote for a lot of this is to follow those lessons of radical love. I think it's fascinating. Marilyn, you're stuck with me. I like you. Tell me, unfortunately, these things are only like 25 minutes. I'd like to make them. My class lectures are an hour 50, and those are fascinating. Oddly enough, no students ever ask for extra time. But tell us, you're an absolutely fascinating individual, and for those that are listening, you need to go back and watch this podcast, because if you can't see Marilyn and the light that comes from her, and the energy and the love that you produce, you're not getting the full impact. What have we not covered that you'd like to say about your mom's legacy and your legacy?
My mom taught me that the beauty of America lies in the diversity of its people. All of us are different, and if we can sit down at the table together and start understanding our differences, anything is possible in this country. But then when you start isolating yourself and putting you in the corner and somebody else behind, we'll never grow the way we need to grow as a nation.
That's beautiful. Dr. Hill, I always love being with you. That's a hard act to follow right there.
Oh, it is.
That's a hard reality to follow. Your life's work is one that is fundamentally important, and so much of it is embodied in the life of Marilyn and her mother. And obviously, you're a student and a scholar of that. What message during Black History Month would you like to give?
I would just like to stay on, Mother Luper's radical love. I think that is her most potent legacy, what she left to the world, to teach people to love those who despise them. The reason why that's so important is when laws change and people's relationships to each other don't, we get the same thing. We get the same kind of society. And so Mother Luper's brilliance is we have to focus on loving each other and the relationships that we're going to create after those laws are passed. And so creating relationships in love, and when I say love, a deep caring concern for one another, creating those kind of relationships are what's going to produce the kind of change, the lasting change that we want. And so the reason why I really want to focus on her radical love, that's her most potent legacy. And that's what I think we most need to be thinking about and activated around, right, in 2024, if we want to bring the vision of her, the kind of society that she wanted to have, to fruition. Would you agree, Marilyn? You would agree.
Karlos, I always agree with you.
I can't tell you all how meaningful this conversation has been. I was about to say it was enjoyable, and it was, but that doesn't do it credit. That doesn't give it credit. It's a critical lesson, and it applies to Black history, and it applies to no matter what color you are or where you come from. When we want to strike back at those who are treating us wrong, and when the law is against us, this idea, and it's transcendent, right? It's not just civil, peaceful disobedience. It's actually radical love. And that's absolutely beautiful. I'll take it with me the rest of my life. And now I finally understand Stan Evans. Right? I thought it was special about him. He just learned it from Clara Luper. Right? And you caused the whole problem by starting the city.
There it is.
Hey, thank you all for being here. It means a lot. And I know that all of us, I know I'm better off for having engaged in this conversation. So thank you all for being here. It means a lot.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
And to all of you who are listening, you better watch this. As I said, if you don't watch it, you don't understand it, because there's so much that emanates from these two amazing people. I'm blessed to have you both as a part of my life. So thank you all very much. For all the listeners, this was a very special Conversations with the President. Thank you for celebrating us with this episode. Thank you for being a part of this Black History episode. And thank you for being a part of the life of the university. Look forward to seeing you next time on Conversations with the President.